allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting of the East Troy School District Board of Education and all other meetings of the board are open to the public in compliance with state statute. Notice of the meeting has been sent to the media and/or has been publicly posted in an attempt to make the citizens of the district aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Then we have the minutes from the September 23rd meeting.
Move to approve the minutes of the September 23 regular board meeting.
Second.
Any discussion, changes? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Public participation. Is there anybody that would like to speak tonight? Okay, we'll move on to the financial report.
I move the approval of September 2024 payments in the amount of $2,103,857.27 and receipts in the amount of $1,144,863.64 as reflected on the financial statements.
I'll second that.
All right, discussion, questions?
Nice to see that interest every month.
Yeah, it's nice to see. All right, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, discussion action items. First one is the setting of the 24-25 tax levy and the 24-25 district budget.
I can say some things regarding the levy and the 2024-25 budget. As discussed in the annual meeting, there was a proposed budget and tax levy presented. This is before some of the final numbers are received. We receive our pupil count mid to end September. We receive equalized property values October 1st. We receive state general aid October 15th, as well as voucher payments and some other revenue limit adjustments. After we receive all that final data, we can set the final tax levy as well as the original budget for 2024-25. This year, the final proposed tax levy is $18,677,669. That includes all funds, Fund 10, Fund 39, and Fund 80. It is a 6.18% increase over the previous year's levy. There are two main factors for this. One was the increase of vouchers. Parents through school choice can have their child attend a private or parochial school and receive some funding for that education. And that increased significantly over the prior year, so that increases the overall revenue limit, and therefore the tax levy was affected as well. Although it increases our revenue, it also increases our expenses because that revenue we take in is then channeled over to the private or parochial schools. So basically it's a net, but it does show up in our bottom line of our revenues and as well as expenses. Another factor that affected the tax levy was the state general aid. We received $541,626 less in state aid. If you remember from the annual meeting when I was talking about our revenue limit, there's two pieces. There's state aid and property taxes, which a combination of those two make up our revenue limit. So the revenue limit will stay set at a certain point, and then our state general aid or property taxes, the combination has to equal the total revenue limit. So when state aid goes down, our tax levy goes up, so we're still at that revenue limit. We don't receive more revenue overall. In fact, our revenue only increased 1% in Fund 10 from the prior year, so very minimal overall revenue limit increase, but the tax levy did increase in a large part due to that state aid decrease, as well as the voucher payments. This is our second year of the operational referendum. Next year will be the third year of the $3 million operational referendum that does increase the revenue limit. Equalized value growth of properties was 3.84%. I must say that is overall the whole district. Our largest municipalities, Village of East Troy and Town of East Troy, were less than the 3.8%. Fortunately, there's some other municipalities, such as LaGrange, they were up to 10 to 11% increase. Yes, the good news is the estimates going forward, it's estimated to be more like 1-2% increase in future years. Overall, the district was well below the state average of 7.69 this year as well. And the mill rate, it increases slightly from last year, which was 6.79, and increases 15 cents to 6.94 per $1,000 of property taxes. In your packet on page 55, there is a sheet that summarizes all the property values and tax levy for each municipality. That's on page 55, as well as a levy scenario sheet on page 54, which gives some different scenarios of homeowners in different municipalities and how that would affect their tax levy this coming year. And those sheets are also made available to the public with the agenda for the meeting tonight. Along with the tax levy, the district sets a tax levy, a mill rate of 6.94. There's also the school levy tax credit, which I did not mention at the annual meeting this year. That is a credit that taxpayers see directly on their tax bills. It is channeled through the municipalities. The school district does not touch those funds at all. But I encourage taxpayers to look at their tax bills. On the right-hand side, there's a box with the tax levy credit. On this particular bill, it's $554. So it is a significant credit that reduces the school tax obligation. And if I do the math, last year our mill rate that the school district set was 6.79. And after that tax credit, if I figure the mill rate again, it's down to around 5.3, 5.5%. So that tax levy credit that is not seen until the final tax bills channeled through the municipality does reduce the tax obligation as well. The state biennial budget increased that by $590 million across the state. So it's just a different way of providing tax relief that it does not directly come through the school districts, however. There's also other data in your meeting packet tonight, such as the revenue limit worksheet, equalization aid. A lot of factors go into the overall budget and tax levy. Another thing to note on the tax bills, it does list our referendums. There are 2 listed from the original referendum in 2015, which expires in 2036. Those were both from building of the Little Prairie. It was the reason there's 2 is just the way it had to be structured. One was a much smaller amount for certain work, and then there's another referendum that covered the majority of the building of the Little Prairie. It was all from 2015 associated with that referendum to build the school. And there's a third line, that's the referendum for the operational referendum that passed in 2023 and ends next year in 2026. So then overall, the tax levy composes of 3 funds. Fund 10 is our general operating fund. The tax levy for that fund is $16,632,432. Then there is Fund 39, which is our bonds or our debt. That is $1,741,925, as well as Fund 80, which funds community programs, and that is $303,312, for a total tax levy of $18,677,669. Are there any questions regarding the budget or tax levy?
I just want to reiterate really quick what Amy said. in regards, she had a lot of points, so I'm not gonna go through them all. Really nice job, Amy. But I think a big point that needs to be made is oftentimes people hear like, oh, there's a 6.18% increase in the tax levy this year compared to last year. So people hear the district got a revenue limit that went up 6.18%. That is not correct. The tax levy increase is going up 6.18%. The revenue limit, the amount we can spend in regards to everything, has gone from, if you really take away, I want to praise East Troy again for thanking them, thanking everybody in the community for the additional $3 million per year for 3 years of the operational funds. But if you were to take that $3 million away, if you were to take that away from the actual revenue limit that's within the sheets right now, off the $21,888,704, you would have basically $43,600 more in revenue now than you did in 2021. All right, so what I'm trying to bring up is we have $43,600 approximately more now than we did in 2021. It's 24, 25. So I think that's a really important point when we look at spending and the revenue limit and where we're at compared to now and then. And then ask yourself, what's inflation been the last 4 years? All right, that's the point being needed. So people might say, yeah, but the tax levy is a component of the pie, right? You have aid and you have levy. You have taxes and aid, period, within the pie, primarily, all right? And with that, right, we're receiving less aid, and so obviously tax levy is going up because we're receiving less aid. So, but we're not, our revenue limit isn't going up significantly. In 4 years, it went up basically, like I said, $43,000, $44,000 in regards to that. I just think that's a really important point. The other thing that I found very intriguing, if you use those same numbers, timeline, is if you go back and look at the total levy back in, off the sheet of, that Amy provided on the historical budget levy scenario with tax impact. I'm not sure what number that is within the packet. I don't see a number on the bottom, but it's this sheet, right, with the historical component. And when you look at that, I find it intriguing if you look back at, just look at the tax total levy back in the actual year of 21-22. The total levy back in 21-22 was $15,693,870. And the total levy now, today, is $18,677,669. And people might go, well, yeah, what are you getting at? Well, take $3 million off of that. Take $3 million off of that, because $3 million's within that. So if you take $3 million off the $18,677,669, right, it's $15,677,669. In 21-22, the total levy was $15,693,000. So it's actually, without the operational referendum dollars, it'd be less than it was in 21-22. So again, I thank the East Troy community for the $3 million, but I just really want people to understand, it's not, when you hear certain numbers, it doesn't mean that the district is spending at an excessive rate, and it does not mean that we're getting this revenue limit at an excessive rate. It's about the shifting of the pie, basically. The pie is not increasing, really. We've talked about that before. It's just about how the pie is getting divided. And I find that intriguing to look at those numbers, because I think those are really important points, and maybe some of it comes from calls and conversations that I have frequently, but I just want people to really understand those components. And then the final thing I want to point out is the equalized growth this year was 3.84%, which is right. And within the capital referendum assumptions, when we're looking at impact, tax impact, we had for this year a 3.8%. Not significant, but 0.4 still, right, in the positive for us. And then thereafter, we go to, remember, we go to 3.0 for 25, 2.0 for 26, and 1.0 thereafter for all the other years for the 20-year bond. And we said that we were being very conservative in those numbers, and I think this represents that, right? That we're saying the growth is gonna go down, when the reality is, I'm very confident our growth is going to continue to go up, which will have a benefit to the tax impact of that capital referendum for each taxpayer. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Amy or Chris on the budget and levy? Or would somebody like to make a motion?
Would that be a motion on this recommendation here? Would that be the wording? Approving the tax levy and budget?
Yep.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the total tax levy. Do I have to list out all the funds? Okay. Approve the total tax levy of Fund 10, $16,632,432. The Fund 39, $1,741,925. And the Fund 80, $303,312 for a total tax levy of $18,677,669 and approve the 24-25 original budget as presented.
Second?
All right, discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of early college credit and Start College Now applications for the 24-25 school year.
So on page 71 of your packet, you'll see the summary of the applications that we have for early college credit and Start College Now. So just a couple of reminders about these programs. Your approval tonight does not guarantee that the student is going to take the course that they are requesting. It just allows them to take it if you approve. So there's some factors that could impact their registration in those courses. It could be their schedule, class, work, or extracurricular. It could be students' GPA or attendance, which could prevent them from taking that. And then according to our policy 343.3, we pay for up to 18 combined credits of early college credit and Start College Now. So we track that. If a student is taking credits above that 18, it's then the responsibility of the family to pay for those credits. We pay for up to 18 combined between those programs. So that's something that we track and communicate to families as well. So for early college credit, you'll see two separate students. One is seeking approval to take some classes at UW-Milwaukee, and the second is seeking approval to take some classes through UW Independent Learning, which is through the Universities of Wisconsin system, but it's a self-paced program, so they have a set amount of time to accomplish all the work of the course, and it allows for more flexibility. Then you'll see a summary of the applications for Start College Now. So we have 10 students who are seeking approval to enroll in coursework through Gateway Technical College. I've listed the courses there. One student is seeking approval to enroll in some classes at Waukesha County Technical College. Another student is going to be taking a series of courses to certify them to be a nail technician, also through WCTC. 2 students are seeking approval for participation in the HVAC Academy through Gateway. One student is seeking approval to enroll in firefighter preparation programs, both seeking approval for Gateway and WCTC. Again, they won't take both. It's really which one is going to fit in their schedule and has spaces available for this student. So this just allows them to take whichever one is most appropriate. And then 9 students are seeking approval for participation in our CNA course that is taken at the high school. With that, I want to add a note that through the hard work of our new CNA coordinator, Janessa Pluis, who's actually here, we are now a state-approved CNA test site. So students will be able to take their CNA certifying exam at the high school. So we'll bring in an instructor who will proctor them, and they'll be able to get their certification there instead of having to schedule and travel to another institution to do that. This will be our first year doing that, and then we look forward to potentially opening that opportunity to surrounding schools. And then last on the list is a student who will be moving their participation for CNA. They were previously approved to take it in fall 2024, but we're moving it to spring 2025. So I just wanted to call it out because the dates are a little bit different on their application, but through Ms. Keene's approval, we'll be deferring it to this coming spring. Any questions about any of those?
Of those 25 students altogether, some of them are, they're not all different 25 students, are they? Some of them possibly taken, asking for multiple?
No, so they are asking for different, like maybe multiple classes, but each student is represented individually.
I move the approval of the early college credit and Start College Now applications as they were presented.
I'll second.
All right, discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right,
Thanks, Janessa.
Taylor.
So I also get to present on the next one.
All right,
So the approval of our 5-year commitment renewal through RVA. So on page 72, you'll see a little bit of information about RVA. If you're unfamiliar, it's our Rural Virtual Academy that we partner with. So essentially, this organization is a accredited school in Wisconsin who has classes available taught by licensed Wisconsin educators through several different formats. And what it allows us to do is offer a virtual option to students while remaining students of East Troy. So we've recognized that there are some families and students for whom virtual is the best option. We don't offer our own virtual program. And so these students' really only option if they want to be virtual students would be to open enroll to another district. And so through partnering with the Rural Virtual Academy, who partners with many surrounding districts as well, we're able to keep them as East Troy students. They can participate in our extracurriculars, they can participate in other programming, but they remain our students and then are able to take virtual schooling. So you'll see some information here about how long we've partnered with them. This is our first 5-year commitment renewal. So our first year partnership was 2020, 2021. And I have some data there about how many students have participated. You'll see not many students have been full-time RVA students, only a few each year. Last year in 23, 24, you'll see 2.5. One student was enrolled in RVA for a portion of the year, but not the entire year, which is why there's a 0.5. And then you'll also see that last year we took advantage of other opportunities they offer, which are called District Connect. So we had a group of 5th graders who participated in a Kids in Action program that focused on problem solving and leadership in the state. So they were able to participate in that. And we also had 2 students who are English learners participate in a language league. So we're able to also offer some additional programming other than just traditional virtual schooling. You'll see some information there about the costs. They do say that they will continue to anticipate tuition increase as operating costs increase. So they're unable to give us like a exact number of those increases, but they're able to give us an average. So the cost of attendance has averaged under $4,000 for over a decade. And then you can see a little bit of information about how much we pay for attendance, around $4,000. Or rather under $4,000 in comparison to how much open enrollment fees cost. So for a student, $8,962 for general education or $13,814 for special education. So again, those would be the amounts that we would be paying to another district if a student were to open enroll there. Rather, we keep them as our students and we pay RVA a fraction of that. So we are recommending that we continue our partnership with RVA. Essentially, by agreeing to that, we would be committing to a 5-year partnership renewal. We pay when we have students. So we're not just paying a flat rate. We pay for what our students are receiving. But the partnership renewal would allow us to continue sending students to RVA as appropriate, as determined by them and their families.
I'll make a motion to approve the 5-year commitment for Rural Virtual Academy. Okay, discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Overnight field trip request. Nice. Thanks.
Overnight field trips from the high school. Most of the ones that are in your packet, all of them are FFA. So they, and I appreciate this, worked at the beginning of the year here to do all of the overnight field trips at once. So that makes it nice for us. So the first trip is to Indianapolis for the FFA Leadership Conference. The second one is for another FFA leadership, the National FFA Workshop at the end of November for 14 students. Stevens Point for an FFA Leadership Halftime Leadership Conference in January. February is a overnight conference for 6 students in Madison. That's when they meet with the legislatures and talk about programming statewide for FFA. And then also in March, there's 7 students want to go to Green Bay for another leadership, national leadership conference. And then finally, in June, at the end of the school year, a leadership workshop, again in Madison, for the National Leadership Conference. Any questions about FFA's overnight field trips? And then Ryan Mansky provided me this at the end of last week. We have traditionally hosted the Hunch Critical Design Review for many years. It was something that we were very proud of, and they have moved that. So we aren't hosting it this year. It is going to be in Missouri. So it's not until the end of February, but we have to start to make plans and hotels and such. So he's anticipating around 11 students would go down to Missouri as part of the Hunch Club for the design review down there. And we'll miss hosting. Hopefully next year we can host again. Any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the field trips as presented.
I just got them all organized.
Yeah,
I'll second.
okay. It's easier.
I was ready to read through them one by one.
Stacy already did.
Work smarter, I know. It's good.
All right, any discussion? Okay. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. East Troy High School and East Troy Fire and Rescue Cadet Partnership. Thanks.
Am I on?
Yep.
Perfect. I apologize for my attire. We had youth football equipment turn in, so I was just sweating for a long time, and now I'm here. So I'm not dressed professionally. I apologize. What I have in front of you, I gave you the youth apprenticeship flyer on the front of it. That's just an overview of the youth apprenticeship program as a whole. We've always had the youth apprenticeship program at the high school, but they are expanding rapidly at the state level. It's a program through the Department of Workforce Development, and obviously we're in a labor shortage in Wisconsin, so they are extending their opportunities immensely to students to start their careers earlier as employers are begging for more employees. So at the bottom of that flyer is all of the program options available to students to enroll in while they're still in high school as a junior or senior. One of them that they just added this summer was in emergency services. So our East Troy Fire and Rescue Department reached out and said, we heard of this, we would love to partner, and we have had students that are enrolling as cadets before, but now we're forming an actual partnership through the youth apprenticeship program. Joe DeGaro, the chief, was going to come tonight, but we saw him speeding past, obviously, to a rescue of some sort, so he's not here. So I'll just explain it from the perspective of the school and a little bit from the fire department. The second page is the actual partnership agreement. Basically, we will be using the Start College Now program that Taylor already presented to pay for the students' courses. So our obligation at the high school is to pay for the course, provide them related instruction at the high school of some kind, and then award them credit towards graduation for their time at the fire department. The student obviously has responsibilities that they need to complete all the coursework, follow their obligations at the fire department, attend the required trainings at the fire department and such. And then the fire department is fulfilling their obligations of training them on the job, and covering all of their equipment costs and stuff like that. So kind of a three partnership between the student, the school, and the fire department, again, all housed under that youth apprenticeship program and Start College Now. It's been wonderful so far. We have one student, Joe would have talked about her. She's been there since last year. She started going to the fire department before she was even old enough to enroll in the courses, fell in love with it, and now she will be an actual youth apprentice this year, earning her state certification as a youth apprentice, the graduation cord, and credit towards graduation for her time at the fire department. The second student that we hope to have join the program was in that packet. He's the one that is applying for approval at WCTC and Gateway. He wants to do the WCTC class, but it fills up very quickly in the fire services, so probably the Gateway one.
Awesome.
Great program. That sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you.
You don't need anything from us, really, just informational. Okay. Sounds good. Early graduation request for the 24-25 school year,
Go into executive session.
and administration and supervisory contracts.
Executive session.
Okay, reports.
Just really quick, a reminder that the 5th of November obviously is a large vote for a lot of different varying reasons, but from the school district's perspective, obviously we have a capital referendum that's on the ballot, and we are just urging everybody to come out and vote. Vote. That's all I said. Come out and vote. The board has said it many a times prior to, obviously, with past even any referendums, and that is, we just like to have a high turnout to know, right? So please have anybody who's eligible to vote come vote, so that we truly know where the community stands in regards to the question that's being asked. In regards to the question that's being asked, the Board of Education is seeking a $19.4 million capital referendum. That's a 20-year bond. The three primary areas, right, are safety and security, critical maintenance projects, and academic spaces. I won't go into all the varying areas at this time, but I do ask people if they want to learn more about the referendum, if they are seeking additional information, to visit the website, call up district offices, call up building level administrators. There's plenty of people who can probably answer a question, and if not answer the question, we'll find the answer to it. But we're more than willing to have the discussions in regards to it. And then the most, probably one of the most important critical aspects that people often ask, right, after they find out where the money's being utilized for, and that is, what's the tax impact? And the estimated tax impact at this time, with our assumptions that we're using, was $21 per year on a $100,000 home. Or I will multiply that out, right? A $300,000 property value would be $63 per year. Which then, obviously, if you break that down, right, the $21 per year is $1.75 a month, and the $63 per year for $300,000 of property value would be $5.25 per month. Those are, again, estimates. We've stated all along our assumptions that are in there, but we believe our assumptions are conservative. So we're hopeful that the estimates will be lower, but we are not going to go there until, obviously, we would know. But we do believe our assumptions are strongly conservative, to the point that hopefully that number would improve on the tax impact side. Again, one of the things that I've had a lot of people ask is, and I appreciate that, what happens if it doesn't pass? And I don't believe that's anybody asking on either side of the spectrum when they're asking me. I really don't even know where they're standing necessarily when they're asking me that. I think they're just curious to know, are there other solutions? I've been forthright on that, saying I don't know of any at this time. We've had this discussion for some time. We had this discussion when we last went to the operational referendum, and we had this discussion prior to that in regards to some of our facility needs. The issue has been, right, trying to balance the operational sides and the facility sides, and trying to balance the two together. So I think we've been very forthright about that. We've been very upfront about where our operational needs are, about what we have at this time, and that's a three-year operational, that we're in the second year. But we've also now are saying, look, we've got large-scale facility needs, and the board has at one time, right, with the help of others, identified, I believe it's over about 113, Mr. Hernandez is here, about 113 projects. As you can see from here, we're only doing a few projects. So we've tried to narrow in greatly from the feedback of the Citizens Facilities Advisory Committee to the feedback of the survey, to ongoing discussions with other people. We've tried to narrow in the scope of the project, right? And to bring it down to what are the most critical needs and also the most doable from a standpoint of a tax impact. Knowing that there's a balance between the operational and the facility, and what is a proper number of an impact to a community member. So that's been the ongoing challenge. I think from the standpoint of answering that question, going back when somebody has said, if it were not to pass, one, I'd like to be optimistic, but two, we've been forthright with that, saying we don't know. If it were not to pass, these needs, as Jake Hernandez would tell you, are not gonna go away. So how do we address those needs then? If they're not gonna go away, they're only going to become possibly more critical over a course of time. So that would be a challenge and a dilemma after the 5th of November. If it were not to be a successful passage, then we would have to somehow be talking about that and addressing it. Some people have asked us about our fund balance. Our fund balance would not cover this amount of needs. And in all due respect, we've worked, this is my 18th year, we've worked very diligently to have that fund balance be greatly at a high percentage. So in my second year, it was down to 9.3%, I believe. And now we're up to about 36.25%, which has helped us because we finally achieved last year and this year not having a short-term borrow, which saves us on that interest. That's just a small minor component of it, right? We like to have a healthy fund balance in case we do have something that needs immediate assistance, hopefully, on not a cliff item, right? Facilities that we could actually assist with to continue the operations of our district if need be. But our fund balance would not come close to achieving these type of facility projects. And even if we were to use a large portion of it to achieve some of these, to operate a fund balance back into the 9% or less range again, in my professional opinion, would be fiscally irresponsible. So we may not have a choice, right? But I believe it would be fiscally irresponsible if we have choices. With that being said, that's kind of where we're at. I just wanted to really state, I encourage everybody to that's eligible to come out and vote. And I encourage everybody, before they go vote, to really understand the question. Understand the question. And then after that, you gotta make your own personal choices, and that's respected, totally respected. But please, please go vote, and please understand what it is you're saying yes or no to. That's it. One other thing, sorry. And that is, October is National Principals Month. And we've been very busy in the month of October, been waiting for this board meeting to occur. Sometimes I even forget we're in October. I'm not lying when I tell you that. I forget the year, more or less the month. But I wanted to say to all the principals, thank you. They have an extremely hard job. And I don't think sometimes people recognize that. I think they think they run a building, certain number of kids in it. They help support the staff. And I can tell you, It's not running a building and just supporting staff and helping the students to make sure they're achieving and communicating and connecting with families. It's leading learning. It's deciding and recommending and having to organize resources. It's managing schedules. It's helping students that are achieving and helping students that are struggling to achieve, emotionally, behaviorally, academically. And it's working with families, and families of all variety of needs and wants. And that's not easy to have that type of culture and communication and all those things that go into it, and to stay abreast of all the new research or practices that are going on. I can't even fathom right now the information overload that we're all probably feeling in regards to AI in itself and policy development on that and everything else. So all of that in general, and then thinking about where we've been and where we are and where we want to go and the things we've been through, right? Pretty incredible and stuff. And they know, so I will give a lot of credit to them. I involve them heavily, probably too much sometimes, in regards to knowing like all sectors of the district. And I'm sure sometimes they wish that, can I just be in charge of my building and not know everything else? But I do really appreciate their feedback, and that's why I involve them, because they're extremely knowledgeable, bright, and most importantly, caring individuals. And it's just a privilege for me as a superintendent to have such great colleagues to work with. It's been an honor, and I mean that. And I hope this community, and I hope the boards, past and present, really recognize that, because you got some pretty incredible individuals out there. And I don't see Mr. Judd here tonight, and that's not to point him out. Aaron's gonna be like, thanks a lot for pointing me out. I know he's busy, but I wanna make sure Aaron understands that too, as assistant principal, and that goes for our deans of students and everything else too. But this is National Principals Month, and that's why I'm just focusing on them. But thank you so much.
Thank
That's
you.
it.
All right, business manager report, Amy.
Yes, every third Friday in September, we have our pupil count. This year it was September 20th. And we start with counting all our students in our seats, which is called our head count. And this year we are 74 students less. That's mostly happening at the upper grades, where the class sizes continue to gradually get smaller as students move through the K through 12 grades, as well as this year, our youngest students coming in, those classes are a bit lower than they have been in the past. So that's 74 students less. Open enrollment in was 7 less. Open enrollment out was 17 more students than the previous year. So we take our head count, we subtract open enrollment in, because they are not our residents, they're not in a revenue limit. We add back in open enrollment out, because those students are residents of our district, so they are counted as our members, and those numbers go into our revenue limit. And then once we have the adjusted head count complete, that number is converted to FTEs, which stands for full-time equivalents. So our youngest learners are preschool students who come for special education services are counted as 0.5 FTEs. 4K students are counted as 0.6 FTEs, and then from kindergarten through 12th grade, if a student attends full-time, they are counted as 1 FTE. So when everything was counted and converted to FTEs, we ended up with 1,520 for our membership, and this is the number that is inputted in the revenue limit worksheet and is used to calculate our revenue limit. And this number is actually the same as what was presented at the annual meeting. Summer school did help. There was an additional FTE, as well as an additional charter school that added into that, which made the number equate to the same as what was presented at the annual meeting. I am looking at the data and compiling some charts and statistics on our open enrollment, looking at which district students open enroll out to, as well as into We sent a survey out to all open enrollment out students. Other years, we have just sent them to new applicants. So we are trying to gather a lot of data and see if there's something we can do to meet everybody's needs and become the district of choice for those students. We also try to reach out to the community as much as possible, such as programs like summer school, which Amy will talk about in a few minutes, where we increase numbers in both residents and non-residents. So we are always welcoming additional students, and I'm trying to listen to any feedback regarding our programs and to become the choice of resident families, as well as open enrollment in families.
The other thing is if Amy hit on the number of 1343, which was the head count, right, for this year. Obviously, we won't get into that. She already went through the whole idea of the membership, which goes into the revenue limits and everything. But a point that I just wanted to make too is, out of the 1343, a little bit of the frustrating part, it's the reality, right? It happens everywhere. But that's the third Friday count. And since the third Friday count, so you're only talking, it's October 21st today, so really about a month, right? And we already had a plus 12 late starts, late entries since that date. So really it's 1355 if you were to look at it today. But that additional 12, we don't get to count. We don't get to count. So they're gonna be an expense in our district, right? But we don't get to put them into the revenue limit. It's not part of the third Friday count. So, you know, and every school district probably runs into that, right? Some districts might have it where it goes the opposite direction. They're like, great, we got to count them and they left after. I hate to say it that way, but the districts like us in this case had more enrolled after the third Friday count. Doesn't assist us in the third Friday count, which is part of the whole revenue limit equation. So I still am happy we're at 1355 rather than 1343. Don't get me wrong. The other thing that I would imagine some of you might be thinking about is, hey, where was our projection last spring when we did the budget, right? And that's a very good question to ask. The projection last spring was at a 1370. So truly, based upon where we're at now, 15 off. Truly based upon what the revenue limit is, right? No, I mean, in a 1343 to the 1370, so 27-ish off, right? So now remember, when I say that, right, revenue limits are based on 3-year averages. So let's say, you know, I'll just take the easy one, the 1355, 1370, 15, right? So 15, well, what you would, you know, think of it as 5 FTEs, because it's 3-year average, and then multiply it by the revenue limit, you know, so if per pupil is around 11,000, it would be 55,000. You wouldn't do 11,000 times the 15 because it's 3-year average, if that's making sense. So roughly saying where I'm going with it is, you can anticipate, yes, right? Like, we've already shared the budget, we have a balanced budget, but the realities were we had to do some work on it due to the fact the number didn't come in fully to fruition at that point. So, but the good news is the budget is balanced as presented at this time. At this time.
All right, thanks, Amy. Director of Teaching and Learning, another Amy.
Page 108 is the summer school enrollment numbers for 2024. So you will see a chart that details the last 3 years just as a comparison. And so we are required to follow DPI's algorithm and formula for reporting the minutes of attendance. So it's not just the cheeks in the seats, the head count, it's the minutes of attendance as well. And so we have to do a submission based on that. We have offered this year 26 elementary courses, 8 middle school courses, and 8 high school courses, 408 resident students enrolled in our programming, and 33 non-resident students. So both of those numbers were up from last year. That resulted in 21 FTEs for the summer school membership count. You will notice that our numbers have gone up a little bit more in elementary for the courses that that are offered. Middle school, it stayed the same. High school courses, we had one more. The challenge has been staffing since the 2020 school year. If you remember, at that point in time, we did survey staff to determine if there was something that we could do to make teaching summer school seem, you know, more welcoming and interesting, but it was communicated at that point in time that our staff just needs a break, and that was what the summer was for, which we totally understand and respect. But it's important to keep that in mind, because we will begin to open up our staffing now in December for summer school 2025, and that tends to be a challenge. So I may be talking more about that as the months roll on. But the good news is we were up 3 FTEs from last year. Any questions on that?
In Act 20?
Act 20, yes. So last year I talked a lot about Act 20, which is the early literacy legislation that has come in for Wisconsin schools. It essentially handles 3 key parts. One is assessment. So much like the forward exam is used to measure students' understanding of state standards in the area of math, reading, science, and social studies. Act 20 will focus on early literacy, kindergarten through 3rd grade. The state of Wisconsin selected Ames Web Plus as the platform for that assessment. That was selected in late July. Originally, the law had said that all school districts are required to do a fall assessment, a winter assessment, and a spring assessment. Due to the late adoption and the time it took out to work out a contract, all districts were, we did not have to, we were exempt from the fall window. So we administered the assessment that we had been using for previous years, called FastBridge. Our staff will be trained on Ames Web Plus in anticipation of the window opening in January. At that point in time, any student in kindergarten through 3rd grade who scores below the 25th percentile will receive a personalized reading plan that will be carried out by our reading interventionist. So you remember we added a reading interventionist to ensure that we are be able to serve the needs of all the students falling below the 25th percentile. So we're currently working on building that template using the Wisconsin State DPI template that they have created. So we're getting that in alignment so that we will be ready to go in January for the first administration of the Ames Web Plus. The other component of that is professional learning. So all elementary teachers are required to engage in professional learning around the science of reading. You also approved that last year with the adoption of the AIM pathway to proficient reading. Our staff has started that training. They started in summer, and now we are dedicating the remainder of our in-service time to that. It's going to take approximately 55 hours of time. They engage in some modules that are done online, and then using that information, they meet in what's called virtual communities of practice with an instructor to apply the information gained from the knowledge. We also have reading interventions serving as coaches, and so those interventionists are meeting with specific grade levels to address the application of the content from the course to the classroom, all based on the science of reading. And then lastly is curriculum. So the state of Wisconsin has vetted many publishers of curriculum related to the science of reading, and as a district, we are engaging in a K-12 audit that starts with the focus on standards, and now we'll be digging into best practice around reading instruction related to the science of reading, and then we'll be doing an audit with what we currently have and what we need to determine if any purchases need to be made. And that's the summary of Act 20. Any questions?
No questions. We heard a little bit more about this in our curriculum committee meeting. Thanks to everybody. It's a ton of time, a lot to learn, a lot to go through. It seems like we're attacking it head on, getting through it, and more to come, but it's a lot to get through, so.
All right, thanks, Amy. No other reports. Policy review and development, first reading of Neola policies.
Yeah, so as you'll recall, we approved of the Neola policies to come forth, and it's been quite a process. It does not mean, and I know the board understands this, I'm just stating this for the community, it does not mean that the board is just adopting Neola policies and we're getting rid of East Troy policies. We're working towards utilizing Neola, which has a lot of common policies throughout the state, throughout districts, but where we're working on it right now is developing the policies to make sure that they're East Troy's language to what we want to keep, but also utilizing Neola's language in regards to that's been reviewed by attorney after attorneys after attorneys, and for some common verbiage that is always being used. So with that being said, we finally are bringing forth the first clean draft to the board. This is a first reading. It's a first clean draft. You might look at it and say, what's the difference between that and first reading? First clean draft is Neola's verbiage, but what that means is I can tell you that it's not the first draft that's been viewed. This has had numerous eyes on it. It's had numerous work for months just to get the bylaws to you, the 000s. And so now what it is you guys get an opportunity of viewing it as a first reading, and then we'll have a second reading in November, and if all's good, we'll bring it as a discussion action item in December. The goal is this, just so everybody's aware, so we're gonna start hopefully moving at a pretty decent pace as we're working on these a lot behind the scenes. So these 000 bylaws are now in a first reading, right? So in November, there'll be a second reading. In November, you'll also see then a first reading of the 1000s, which is like on the administration. In December, then, you would have these be your discussion action item, so we'd finally be approving the bylaws, all these, by the way, it's not a law, bylaws, plural, and then you would have a second reading on the 1000s, and you'll have a first reading on the 2000s, and you might be like, and how many do we have? We might be done by June. So we might. Right, and so that'll tell you. One of the things I was hoping is that it would be more succinct, right? Less, instead of our current policy, which is about that thick of a booklet from 100s to 900s, right? Actually 800s here, 100s to 800s. Unfortunately, it's not. It's gonna be this instead of this. It's gonna be a lot more policies. I mean, when you even look at some of the policies that they recommend, we might have a paragraph and they have 10 pages, right? So some of them are clean, but I hate to tell you, the bylaws are probably the simplest and shortest of them. I just did the 1000s for a first reading today, and it's thick. It's very thick. But anyways, and if people are wondering, so what are within the bylaws? I'm not gonna go through them all by any means, but examples would be like a name is in there, purpose of the board, boundaries of the district, classification, address of the district, simple things really, but honestly that you gotta look at very closely. Board powers, bylaws and policies, board philosophy, administrative guidelines, and it doesn't mean like every administrative guideline, like the board's electing to say in policy we'll have administrative guidelines. So what is an administrative guideline and how is that different than an administrative policy? Selection of a district administrator, judicial process, student representations on the board meetings, electoral process. Most things we have in policy. It's just we're electing to probably go with some, to be quite frank, cleaner version of it that just brings it a little more clarity to it. I will let you know, if something gets missed, please let us know, but we're spending a lot of time looking at these from a standpoint of putting a policy down from Neola and then putting our policy down and looking at it verbatim back and forth and making sure that we integrate the language that we like from East Troy into it. The board, past and present, has put a lot of time into the development of those board policies. And so they shouldn't just be pushed to the side and adopted by Neola, right? We need to make sure that we're implementing the language that we've worked diligently on in our district to implement and make sure it's a part of Neola's policies. Are there any questions from the board in regards to any of these that we definitely need to go back? I mean, it's first reading, but that are questions or something that's unclear or truly something that's just plainly missed that we need to go back on?
Is there a mapping document that articulates our policy number to what it is in the new numbering system? I mean, I can obviously just kind of one by one match them up, but I thought if somebody's already done that work.
We haven't done that
Okay.
yet, no. What we've been doing too is we just review the Neola and we learn it, we go over to our policy and just pick them off.
Yeah,
We
no, I
have-
mean, and I can do that too. I just thought maybe
Yeah.
there was somebody sort of like.
We haven't been doing the mapping at all on that, no. Is there anything else?
No.
So these look fairly good to come back for a second reading then? No major changes or anything? If you see of something as you're reviewing it in the month ahead,
Yeah.
just email me and then we'll make the changes before the next board meeting.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Sounds good. Okay, communications announcements.
Just one, and that is, at the last board meeting, you might have noticed on this agenda, you might be like, where is that? So at the last board meeting, we had a presentation on the Hall of Fame, right? Athletic Hall of Fame, and then possibly other things in the future. And we said we'd bring it forth to this board meeting for the board to make a decision on yes on the Athletic Hall of Fame or no, and then where does it go and how will it look? But those discussions have not occurred in regards to where is it going to go and how would that look and everything else. So it's our intent, when those discussions get done, that we'll bring it forth to the board. So we're hoping maybe for November to come back to the board with information.
Okay. All right, future items. Anybody have anything to come to a future meeting? Okay. Then I will make a motion to adjourn to executive session for discussion of early graduation request and administration supervisory contracts as provided under state statute 118.125, 19.851B, 19.851C, and 118.246.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote. Steve? Adam? Yes. Kevin?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
And I vote yes. We're in closed session.